So do you all want to go on and get started, or? I guess we'll call the meeting to order at 10:02, 10:03. First item on the agenda is the minutes of the meeting from January 31st. Has everybody had a chance to review them? Is there any questions or changes? Or if not, is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second? All right. Motion by Mr. Maxwell and second by Councilmember Bledsoe. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. The third quarter expenses for information only. Are there any questions? No? There being none, we'll move right along. And the next is the ratification of the transfer of estimated payroll for April 2017 through June 2017, which for the amount of $330,100. Is there any discussion on this item?
Move approval.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion by Councilmember Bledsoe, seconded by Mr. O'Mara. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is approved. Thank you so much. Next item is the approval of spousal annuity and the funeral benefit. Should we have two separate motions probably, for one for the spousal annuity? Does anybody have any questions on the spousal annuity for Mary Jones? If no questions, is there a motion to approve the spousal annuity?
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Motion by Mr. O'Mara, seconded by
Me.
Gay.
Lang.
Lang, sorry. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? All right. And then we also have a funeral benefit of $7,500 for Mr. Harold Jones. Is there any discussion on that? There being no discussion at all, is there a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All right, the motion made by Ms. Lang, seconded by Mr. Maxwell to approve the $7,500 for Mr. Jones's funeral benefit. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that moves forward. Thank you. Now we're to the investment, and we need to wait for Mr. Yasin to be here. So do we want to go ahead and move down to the ordinance draft?
Yes.
Miss George, are you here for the review of that, or okay, all righty. Would you like to go through that?
Sure. It's my understanding that there had been a request that the law department review the ordinance relating to nominations of members on the board, and also there was a change to the number of council members who are on the board. So we'll just go through this. So the first change relates to changing the board composition. And as you can see, that's been changed from 3 council members to 4 council members. And then also, this draft ordinance that's in your packet. Okay. So the number of council members has changed from 3 to 4, and then the number of retired board members has changed from 2 to 3. And that's the first change that was made. And then if you go to, I guess, the second and third pages, all of that is relating to how you all receive or get retired board members on the board and the process for that. And then just some cleanup things from things that just don't need to be in there anymore. But those are the 2 basic changes, the composition, and then how retired board members are nominated to serve on this board. And I think you all have had previous discussions with Roger about this, and so these changes just reflect your discussions.
So now, as you all see that instead of having to get signatures from your other retirees, it would just require either one signature of a retired member or a signed self-nomination of a retired member. Hopefully you got here safe today. So.
Yes, I did.
Good. So do you all have any questions on that new process?
Sounds good.
And then if I understand, then like the council office will send out ballots, or who's gonna be doing that? Is that?
It looks like according to the ordinance, Glenda, is it still we mail them? I can see that at the top of the page. We're still going to be mailing them. It's just
Everything
that
else is the same.
you don't need the 10 signatures
Right,
to.
right. Right, it'll just be sent out and they'll send back the vote. And I just had one question about the change in the council members. That was for what purpose?
In reviewing the state statute, it's my understanding that it should have been 4, or is that right? 4 instead of 3, and so that change was made.
But wasn't the employee number always 3? I mean, you said it was 2 going to 3, but wasn't it always 3? They were just 2 of them elected differently than the warden?
I think that the statute, or our code, our section had not been updated to reflect what was in this state statute.
Right, that's what I thought. I didn't think the ordinance did, but I thought we always had 1 was elected a certain way and 2 were elected another way.
One was inactive.
Right.
Of course, we had no active members, so that couldn't be done anyway.
Right.
So they all were elected from inactive members.
So is there any other questions on the revised? The reference of the KRS 67A 320, that's why I'd asked the council clerk to make sure that we have the copy of the ordinance so that you all have the language here. And when it's referencing in the very back, if no such alternate group or class of persons are identified in KRS 67A 320, then the positions shall remain vacant unless and until the KRS is amended. So that means that if at some point we can't find 3 retirees to fill, then it just remains empty.
Right.
And that'd be okay if we still have the majority of people to vote for quorum purposes.
Say that again.
The only concern I have here is if it's vacant, at what point do we become enough people to vote for quorums and those kinds of things if there's not enough? Because the mayor's ex officio, you said.
But just because you're ex officio doesn't mean you can't vote. Does the mayor normally vote or not?
He votes when he's here.
It says in here that he does.
Okay, so it doesn't. I think the
I don't
mayor
know.
always
It
did
says
vote.
Does it
I
matter?
think he does.
The mayor doesn't vote.
Okay.
Where it says it in the statute.
Yeah, the statute says it does.
But you have 4. I would think that what would happen is if we got to the point where there weren't any retired members who could fill those spots, then we would try to get a statute amendment. We just wouldn't have vacancies.
Because that's 3.
Right, because that would be, right. So we couldn't just let those remain.
You got a plan?
Okay.
So, I mean, I'm just going to throw this out to the retirees that you guys, so if you all want to think about what needs to happen once no more retirees are able to serve on this, if you want to go ahead and think of what process you would like to see happen, I think that we need to have those discussions, because I do not want, I personally would like to have your all's input as to how you all would like once there's no more retirees that can serve on the board, then who would you like to see as your advocate on the Board of Trustees? So I think you all need to think about that.
Yeah.
Because the state statute would have to be changed in that regard, I believe.
Well, I think one option you might look at would be a spouse, but I think you're gonna run into the same situation if you try to go that direction, so I think you're just stopgapping, so, you know, by doing that, but, personally, I mean, I think you have to look at staff and the council to take care of what's left, and hope that they'll take care of it, because, I mean, that's what they're here for, and I think that,
Because they receive funds too, so they, I think that might work, the spouses.
but I don't think you're gonna be able to get spouses because of the age.
Just as old as the wife.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, and I think you're just defeating your own purpose by making that an option.
What about the beneficiaries?
That's
Well,
what
that's
I'm
what
saying.
she's talking about, the spouses of the retirees. Yeah.
Beneficiaries, I
Don't have a
think
say
they're
in
looking
everything
for
right
the
now.
You have 18
Well,
retirees.
it would have to be a
Left.
beneficiary who's able to come.
Average age is 82.5. You have 46 widows. Average age is about 81.
See, you've got the same
So-
problem.
You could put on the citizen's advocate, which the council pays for now, who answers questions and concerns when they feel like citizens aren't getting representation from council or from the administration. And they're an independent employee, which might be another option, who could advocate for you.
Would you like me to put an agenda item on for the next meeting so they have time to think about it? I'd be happy to do that.
I mean, I think it's good. I think that this is the opportunity to have these discussions. And, I mean, clearly, you all have managed this money along with the government's assistance, but you all have managed this money outstanding. I mean, you all have just been very effective, obviously. So I just want you all to have the opportunity to have it still going forward even when you can't have representation on the board. So I think that would be very nice.
Now, keep in mind, the recommendation for that is separate from this ordinance, because whatever that recommendation is going to be a statute amendment. Okay.
Absolutely, yes, right. And, I mean, do you all have any more questions on the actual 6-49, the section that has been amended? Are you all okay with the changes? I mean,
Now is that proposed to go before council?
it will need to be, yes, ma'am.
They have not.
Oh, no, ma'am. Now, with this board, a board would have to approve it before it, and then approve it to be sent, to move it forward to the full council. And I would assume that's the next motion that we would need to have, is if everybody's okay with the revisions of 6-49 as submitted today, then it would be appropriate for us to have a motion to approve it and to move it forward to the full council for their approval.
So moved.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. So there's a motion by Councilmember Bledsoe, seconded by Mr. Maxwell, that we approve the proposed amendments for section 6-49 of the Code of Ordinances and move it forward to the council. Is there any discussion on the motion? No? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you all, and thanks for the work on that, too. Found it very interesting to read the state statute, where it actually gives the language about what happened with the policemen and firefighters' retirement funds. So I wanted to make sure you all saw that information in there. Okay. We're pleased that Mr. Yassin, that you traveled here safely today, and we welcome you. I would like to ask if you would be ready to go over your review, please.
Yes, Good morning, everyone. Here to report the quarterly performance review for the City Employees Pension Fund. The pension fund is comprised of two portfolios. As you all may remember, one portfolio is to defease the liabilities, or basically protect the benefit payments in a low-risk bond portfolio where the bonds mature according to the schedule of expected benefit payments. And then there's another portfolio for the surplus funds managed in the same manner that the traditional pension had been managed before, in a total return or a return-seeking portfolio. So before I review both portfolios, just want to give you sort of a 5-minute overview of the markets. We're really, this morning, woke up to see the markets are, S&P pretty close to all-time highs again. Since the elections were over in November, now we're almost nearing the first 100-day period. The markets have rallied. Part of that, I think a lot of what you hear in the media is attributed to the expected policies to be coming out of Washington under the new administration, mostly tax reform, tax cuts. There are corporate tax cuts on the table. There's tax reform on the table. And basically what the markets have been anticipating this, and that's why we've been on a rally really since the elections. The thought is that with corporate tax cuts and other types of tax reform, you can see more corporate investment, more hiring, more capital expenditure, some cash that's overseas currently that's not being brought back into the economy. Somewhere in around $2 trillion, 1.5 to $2 trillion, could be a good chunk of that could be brought back into the U.S. economy and circulated in the economy. And so the markets have been on tear. But another reason is really just the economy had always been, since the 2008 crisis, on the path of growth. That's kind of like the main driver. Unemployment is down to 4.5%, continuing its trend to decline. The Fed began to increase interest rates. Now, in March, we saw the third increase since the financial crisis of 2008. We're now at 0.75 to 1% on the federal funds rate. So it looks like the Fed will continue to gradually increase rates. We don't expect rates to go up significantly. I think they'll continue on a moderate path of just slowly moving interest rates back up. Which is healthy. It's a sign that the economy is growing and that inflation is in check. We had some concerns about international with Brexit and other elections in Europe. There were elections in France over the weekend. There were elections in Germany anticipated. There were elections in Holland a month and a half ago or so. And the results of the elections in France were seen favorably by the markets. Essentially, there was a centrist candidate that sort of came up ahead, and Le Pen, who's the sort of the far-right candidate, also came up close second. So there's going to be a runoff for the first time. There will be those two candidates will come back in May and run against each other. The markets reacted very favorably because a centrist candidate would be positive for less disruption in Europe. France potentially less likely to exit the euro with that type of an election result. So, emerging markets were other concerns that we had. Countries like Brazil, China, and India, and Russia had been declining. The fundamentals had been declining since 2013. That's kind of reversed. If you remember our last meeting, we got back into sort of a more neutral international exposure. Portfolio right now is very neutral looking. The only place we're slightly underweight is fixed income, because interest rates rising means bond prices go down, the portfolio value goes down, so we're protecting that a little bit. And we see the economy continues to grow, and so we're just very slightly overweight domestic, high quality, with a defensive, large cap, dividend-oriented exposure. We're also slightly overweight small cap, small companies. The reason why we're slightly overweight small companies is because with tax cuts, smaller companies benefit the most. Large companies have their loopholes and really don't benefit much. And also because the US economy is so resilient and continues to grow, small companies will capture that more so because more of their revenue comes from domestically than internationally. So other than that, the total return-seeking portfolio is more or less neutral, defensive in fixed income because of rising rates, a little bit more over small companies because of what we're seeing happening in the markets. So that's just sort of like an economic backdrop in section 1, to summarize section 1. Jumping into the performance in tab 2, take a look at the market index performance. These are all the different asset classes and how they perform. The first column is the quarter, and year-to-date follows. This is basically just a snapshot of the different asset classes and how they perform. So you can see for the quarter, year-to-date, it's the same period, really. Large cap, represented by the S&P 500, returned 6.07%, outperforming small cap. So for the quarter, large cap did better than small cap. You look at international, particularly emerging markets, that very last line in the international section, MSCI EM, 11.4%. Emerging markets were the best performer for the quarter. International did well. And real estate didn't do so well in a rising interest rate environment. Core real estate obviously will suffer because rising interest rates is a headwind. And then fixed income, the Barclays Aggregate Bond Index, which is a broad measure of investment grade in different maturities, returned 0.82%. You can see that high yield outperformed the Barclays Ag, which means taking on some credit risk paid off, given that the economy is still healthy, continues to grow. Even though credit spreads are tightening, so there's less and less opportunities in corporates and high yield, but given the higher interest yield that they pay, and the economy not going into recession, continues to be at least a place where you can get more yield in fixed income space. That's how the markets did, and then in terms of how did the portfolio do, we go to page 2, section 2.1, that sort of the back of tab 2. So page 2.1, the bottom left, you can see the performance of the portfolio. This is the total return-seeking portfolio. For the quarter, the portfolio returned 4.33%. It outperformed its benchmark. Benchmark returned 4.16%. I'm sorry, it's 4.18. I need my glasses. So there was some outperformance there, and you go back till inception. We're still ahead of the benchmark. The portfolio is outperforming its benchmark, 5.31% versus 5.13. So that's always good to see that we're in line or ahead of the benchmark. You always like to see that. If you look down the first column for the quarter and the different mutual funds that are held in the portfolio, you can see how each mutual fund performed. Again, the mutual funds, based on the respective benchmarks, were, some outperformed, some underperformed. We try to focus on the asset allocation, not so much the manager selection. And so being back into international did pay off. We're not as defensive as we used to be in international. I think now we're just neutral, and the international is bouncing back and outperformed domestic. I think with the results in Europe, that's a positive for international as well. International stocks are a little bit better valued than U.S. stocks. U.S. stocks are heating up and reaching sort of all-time highs. I wouldn't say they're excessively overvalued, but they're kind of rich in terms of pricing. International and emerging markets are a lot more favorable from a pricing perspective. They're a lot cheaper. And so we're neutral right now, and hopefully over the long term, emerging markets and international will probably outperform the US, barring any Brexit-like situations that are temporary, at least over the next 5 years. And then you can see fixed income, not much happening in fixed income, very low returns, very low rate environment, interest rates rising should put pressure on fixed income, and that's why we seek some allocations in corporates and in high yield, as you can see by some of the holdings. So the performance is good versus the benchmarks. Take a look at page 2.3. The cash flows, the net money coming in and out of the portfolio. So this is the return-seeking portfolio. The money flowing out. That's essentially fees for the most part, and then the return on investment. That column you can see the money coming in. So for the quarter, portfolio returns made about $706,000 added to the portfolio. That's just based on the market and the performance. And so the net result is for the quarter we started at 16.34 million and ended the quarter with 17.035 million. So a gain of just under $700,000 net of fees for the portfolio. If you look on the following page, the yellow and the blue bars, or the table, whichever one you look at, basically what's the blue bar is the investment policy target, and the yellow bar is the yellow bar is the investment policy target. The blue bar is the actual allocation. So domestic equity, we're very slightly overweight by 1.7% compared to the target. International, again, very slightly overweight by 1.2%. So overall overweight equities. And for fixed income, you can see the target says 40%. We're at 36%, 36.6%. So we're under allocated to bonds by about 3.4%. Not a huge margin. And then within that, we're being defensive by holding less treasuries that are more sensitive to interest rate hikes, and holding more corporate bonds and high yield. That last page in the return-seeking portfolio report is your index. That's the benchmark that we are measuring our performance against. The benchmark doesn't change unless the goals and the time horizon of the portfolio changes. So it's a broad market index. That covers the return-seeking portfolio. Any questions on the return-seeking portfolio or the markets? If not, then we'll go to the liability defeasing portfolio, and that's really, I think, the most important portfolio. This portfolio is not looking to outperform any particular index. This portfolio is there to protect the benefit payments and make sure that we're invested in the safest manner possible to ensure that projected benefit payments are paid on time and we have sufficient liquidity to make those benefit payments. So this portfolio is not seeking any specific returns except ensuring liquidity when it becomes needed. You can see the on page 12, just a summary. The portfolio market value, 12.9 million, and the yield to maturity at market, the yield to maturity at cost, and then you can see the internal rate of return. It's about 1.85%, and that is inception to date rate of return. The duration of the portfolio is 6.33, which for beneficiaries with an average age of 82 and a half, that's a maturity that kind of reflects the portfolio. And the draws, you can see the draw schedule, the bottom left. The blue is the projected draws, and the yellow is the actual draws. So we're kind of moving along according to schedule. And then page 13, again, just a snapshot of the portfolio composition and the credit quality. So you can see by different fixed income sector, U.S. Treasuries versus U.S. federal agencies, corporate bonds, and money market funds, how are we allocated? So as of March 31st, 26% roughly were in U.S. Treasuries, very little in agencies, and then the majority is in corporate notes. And in terms of credit quality, you can see it's a very, very high quality portfolio. A-rated or better, all investment grade. There is some BBB for yield that we're holding on to, but the corporate space, not seeing a recession on the horizon, the economy continuing to grow. We think that the credit quality is appropriate based on the needs of the portfolio. And you can see the individual names on page 14 that we're holding. There is no concentration risk in any individual or single issuer. Different high quality companies like Caterpillar, Apple, Deere & Company, a lot of good quality names in the portfolio in terms of corporates, those U.S. Treasuries. So again, very high quality names in the portfolio. And the BBB is Morgan Stanley. Morgan Stanley had good results recently. You have mostly financials. Citigroup and Goldman Sachs are the only, and Bank of America are the only BBB names held. And these are sound financial institutions. Page 16. Again, looking at the portfolio in more detail, what does the portfolio look like in terms of the maturities? So you can see by maturity category, we have a lot of overnight securities for immediate liquidity needs, and about 2.1 million in terms of 1 year or less maturity. And then if you look at the table below, the anticipated draws are in the blue. So the beige colored bars you can see are how we're allocated as of March 31st. And you can see in the under 1 year or overnight, there's more liquidity than the anticipated draws. And then the holdings, the specific holdings are listed in the last page, 2 pages. So you can see the actual specific holdings of the liability piece of the portfolio. So that, so overall report, I think we have plenty of liquidity. We're meeting the benefit payment needs on a regular basis. No liquidity concerns. The benefit payments are protected through a liability decreasing portfolio, and then the surplus funds are providing healthy long-term returns.
Great. Mr. Mara.
I need you to help me read a couple of pages. If you look at page 12 in the last section, at the bottom left, for 2017, the yellow is the actual draw, and the blue is the projected. And we're not halfway through the year, but it seems to go more than halfway up. And then when you go back to page 16, you kind of get that same 1 to 2 years. We have 815 with an anticipated draw of 1.2, and it says the difference will be covered from interest income. Are we short for the 12 months horizon? Am I reading this wrong?
I don't think you're reading it wrong at all. I don't think we're going to be short. But I think based on the way we've structured the portfolio, at any time we need liquidity, and we don't need to touch this portfolio. The return-seeking portfolio is very liquid, and these are all mutual funds that can if we liquidated them today before 2 p.m., the cash will be available tomorrow morning. And so the thought is use that portfolio to supplement any needs in this portfolio if we didn't want to touch any longer maturities. And we're revisiting based on the updated actuarial numbers that come in every year. We update our holdings and rebalance the portfolio accordingly. I will check with our fixed income desk because this is not my area of specialty. But I'll check with the fixed income desk what they plan to do in terms of are we
Because
having-
I would think that you would want to, this would make me anticipate a draw from seeking portfolio to supplement the one-year need. Is it,
Yeah.
if I'm reading this?
You're probably correct. Let me check with the fixed income desk
Mhm.
and see what their thoughts are. And if they think we're gonna have a shortfall for the year, then we will liquidate from the return seeking portfolio the necessary amount.
And not to know that space, but it certainly would make sense to me that this would happen with the unanticipated suppression of bond rates. Everyone thought the bond rates were going to go up, even with a rate increase, and the bond rates are going down. So I can see why this is going to happen. I don't know if that's what they'll say.
No, you're probably right, and that's kind of been our thought is as we rebalance the portfolio every year, if we still come across any shortfalls, that's what the return seeking portfolio is there for.
And so I guess to project further, this would show why it's that return-seeking portfolio being 100% backstop to these assumptions is still necessary. That it's there and it's got everybody covered and there's nothing to worry about because we do have this backstop from the second section of the investments.
That's a great question. So let me follow up with you on that in the next couple of days. I'll let you know if we expect to liquidate in order to cover any potential shortfalls for the year.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? No? Further discussion? Thank you for this information. The last item on the agenda, I had just asked for this information to be included so that we all understood what happened in 2013 for as far as the one-time supplement. And not that I want to put anybody on the spot, but but Mr. Mara, would you mind speaking to this? I mean, I know that well, I think Ms. Summers, were you on the board when I think you weren't on the board when this happened.
My first question is, how much money are we speaking about total to do this? Do we know how much money?
What it cost back in 2013, I don't know.
We don't know.
I mean, perhaps what we can do is just ask questions today, and then we could get the answers and have them for the next quarter, for the next meeting discussion.
Well, I mean, I guess my question is, if you do this, how much money is it going to cost? I mean, that's what is the outlay for it?
Are we looking backwards or forwards? I thought I was.
Right. I think the reason that I wanted to have this, I asked to have this on there is for educational purposes of what we did in 2013, and I think it's a very good question to know how much that did cost us. And then to just, I think that for discussion about, going forward, if the retirees feel like that there is something that needs to be done again, or if you all think that we're in a good place. I pretty much, I want to encourage you all to have the discussion, and you're the retirees, you're the ones that are receiving these benefits. So to me, it's very important to understand your all's perspective from this. How do you feel about this?
Well, things that, when I look at it, I certainly think that the retirees, as few as they are, should be the ones to benefit from this plan. And, we talk about what's going to happen to it once everybody's gone. Well, we should worry, to me, more about doing what we can with it, with the people who are in it, and taking care of them. That being said, I mean, I think the first thing we'd have to know is if we wanted to do this again, how much would it cost, and how would that affect our financial situation, or would it have any effect on it?
I only have one, I agree, certainly in concept. My only concern is the number of times we've been sued over HR issues, which I feel like is happening all the time. And if we change it, do we have any backstop those who weren't benefit yesterday, who are benefiting now? For instance, those who are spouses or who, I don't know, is really claim to, how much I'm not phrasing this very well. If we change it, for those who are living and spouses who are living, is there anybody who claims that can come back and say, well, you didn't do that for me, or, does it make sense? Yes or no? You can say no.
Yes, it makes sense.
So is that
The
a,
answer to your question is no. I don't see how they could.
I'm just asking, 'cause it seems like every time we make a change in HR, something else happens, the side effect, and I'm just,
You're talking about general liability, though.
nothing specific. Yes. Yes, I'm asking about general liability.
I would think that there would have to be, I wouldn't think that a member of a family would have the same as a actual member of the retirement system, but lawyer either, so.
That's what I'm asking.
I think it does require a legal review of that question.
You don't think so?
I don't think so, but Roger is your attorney for the pension board, so I think he's the one that really needs to examine it a little further, but I don't think so, just off the top of my head. In 1 minute, I'm thinking about it.
So it sounds to me like we have a couple of good questions that
Right.
we could ask to have some answers before the next quarter, the next meeting, which is July 25th. So perhaps, I know our staff person is.
I got it.
gone, So,
I'm her fill-in.
oh, okay, okay.
She covered for me, I'm covering for her.
Okay.
So I do have, how much did it cost in 2013? How much would it cost and the effect? And then, I don't know, Glenda, are you gonna ask Roger about the liability part of
Yeah,
it?
can you repeat the question for me, please, so I make sure I have it down correctly?
Well, I think they just asked about what kind of I guess, financial liability for any,
Is there any,
is there any?
by making changes?
Legal liability.
Just legal.
This fiduciary liability is really what the question is.
I would assume in 2013 we did it and it was fine, so I would
Yes.
assume it still is fine.
Yeah, we had no problems in
But
13.
it just seems like it all changes so fast in this particular realm. Maybe it's just me that feels that way.
So, do you all have any other questions or thoughts about this? No?
46.
No, I think it's good to look into it.
I mean, it's always good to, I always like to have all the cards on the table when you're talking about things, because you never know, it might look good and it might not, but at least we can have a conversation about it. So,
Do you know if all spouses get, what percentage do spouses get? Is it always 75% or is it?
It is always
It is always
75%
75%?
per the ordinance.
Thank you.
so, is there any further discussion on this item number 7 on the agenda? All right, well then we'll ask for it to come back to the next, to the July 25th meeting with those answers, and we can move forward. So, is there any other business for the day? Any other questions?
Move adjourn.
All right, so,
Second.
all right, motion to adjourn by Councilmember Bledsoe, seconded by Mr. Maxwell. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you all so much. We ordered the sunshine for you today.
Thank
so-